and welcome to episode 3 of the Songwriter Select podcast, where a group of songwriters will be talking about songwriting, music, and anything else which tickles our fancy. I am your host, James Nighthawk, and with me I have 4 fellow writers this week. Firstly, Anthony Lane.
Hello, James.
Hey, you there? And we have Paul Boyd.
Hello.
We have Becky Thomas.
Hello.
And we have our first guest. This week we have Paul Tarl joining us all the way from Canada. Are you there, Paul?
Hi, guys.
Hello there, Paul.
Nice to be here.
You are more than welcome. Now, Paul is our first guest on the forum, on this podcast, and he is from the forum which we all hailed from songwriterforum.co.uk. He is this month's winner of the Song of the Month for his song. What was the name of your song, please, Paul?
The song was called One Too Many, and it was kind of a ballad, kind of a sad ballad, but it seemed to be well received, which I was very pleased with.
It was a very tight run month because there were, was it 5 nominees, Anthony, remind me?
5, yes.
5, and they were all fantastic. The quality
they were so good, yeah. Everyone's song was excellent in my view.
I have a funny feeling it may have been preference on style that won you the competition this time round, as opposed to necessarily the fact that the other songs weren't up to it, because it could have gone any way this month. But regardless, congratulations. It's a really good song, and I'm looking forward to playing it later on the podcast to all of our listeners. So you'll be hearing that in full at some point during a break in proceedings here. So, because you're new to us, Paul, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your musical background?
Sure. I live in Ontario, which is in about the center of Canada, in a little town called Perth. And I think Perth is named after a Scottish town of Perth. Similar to, I think Australia has a Perth as well. As far as my musical background goes, I took piano lessons for a couple of years when I was a kid, and dropped it after a few years until I became a teenager, started playing a bit of guitar. And once I learned the chords on the guitar, I kind of went back to piano, and pretty much piano and keyboards have been my primary instrument since then. I've been, typical in high school bands and this type of thing over the years. Now I'm, fast forward to now, about 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of picked up songwriting again and joined the forum, and gotten a lot of great feedback from the forum, and just even the support network that it offers. It really helps you kind of develop as a songwriter. So that pretty much takes me up to today.
So which instrument was it which really got you into the songwriting part of things?
Likely piano, because I typically, when I'm sitting down at piano, I'm far more comfortable in writing a song.
Good stuff. But do you write on guitar as well?
Yes, I do somewhat. Most of my country stuff is on guitar.
Do you find that the instrument that you're writing on influences the style of music that comes out? Because you mentioned there that you write a lot of your country on guitar.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. You can get a different groove on guitar that you can't get on the piano. And when you try to do it on piano, it starts sounding vaudevillian or something. So, it definitely influences which way you go.
Nothing wrong with vaudeville.
Now, I mean, we've all heard the song that we'll be playing here, and there was quite a few comments, possibly from myself, but definitely from other people on the forum, saying that it had a slight musical theatre vibe to this song. And you said to me that you weren't at all taken either way with that. It wasn't something you were aiming for, but likewise, it wasn't taken as a slur to your music. I mean, is that a kind of music that you listen to, or was this more accidental here?
Yeah, when I write songs, I really don't write to a genre. I'm not really trying to get on the charts, so I don't think of in terms of genre. So as far as that song goes, I wasn't really thinking a theater kind of a song, but I've heard that different times on some of my music, and I take it as quite a compliment. And not knowing much about theater or even the genre of music in theater, it's great to hear that.
Good stuff. Right, let's move on. Let's go straight into our Now Playing section. During this section, we'll all be mentioning an artist who's busy on our turntables, on our hi-fis, iPods, etc. So let's go for let's start with Becky today. What have you been listening to recently, Becky?
I have been listening to Ben Howard, who I started listening to perhaps a year ago. Songs like Oats in the Water and Depth Over Distance. I saw a couple of YouTube videos where they were live versions in kind of the live lounge or other things similar to that. And they're really beautiful, moody songs with kind of deep, abstract lyrics.
For those who don't know him, give us a little bit of what Ben Howard sounds like. How would you describe him?
I think he's sort of described as indie folk, but he's a lot more. I don't know. I'm not very good at describing genres, but he doesn't do just kind of like acoustic and vocal. He uses a lot more electric instruments and effects like delay and so on, and a lot of it is quite moody sounding, which I really like. So he's from Devon, I think, so near you, Tone.
He's a Devon boy, is he?
He is, yeah.
I'll have to listen to him now.
And I think he was Mercury Prize nominated a couple of years ago.
I remember that.
The first album definitely was, and that was my next question. Do you know the tracks you're listening to? Because I'm terrible with track names, but I know albums. Is it from album 1 or album 2 that you've been focusing on?
I've bought both albums recently, because before that all I knew was the couple of songs I just mentioned and a recent single, I Forget Where We Were. But I recently decided to buy both full albums, but it's the more recent one that I've been listening to, which is called I Forget Where We Were.
I thought you were going to say that purely because in his first album, it was far more close to indie folk. He was far more singer-songwritery, guitars, drums, bass. I mean, there was lots of stuff where he was using loop pedals live because he would use repeating chord sequences quite a lot. But the new album I've listened to a couple of times, and as you say, there's a lot more atmospheric, electronic kind of, not forward sounds, but stuff in the back of the mix, which really changed the mood of the pieces. He's definitely gone darker in that respect. So, and you've been enjoying that.
The songs that I mentioned, the Depth Over Distance, I don't think that's from an album, but it was the B-side of a single from around the same time as the first album, and that to me is really dark and moody and a bit distorted sounding, and it's got all that going on. So I think that was already there in his music in the early years being 4 years ago. But
yeah, he has definitely built a following for himself, and I've not seen him live myself, but I've had some friends go and had some very good feedback from it. So he's an artist I would definitely see live if I had the opportunity to do so.
I would love to as well, but I have been reading about some less positive feedback that he's had from live performances, because I think he's a sort of artist that maybe slightly resents having to play his popular stuff all the time. So this is just what I've read, but not seen it myself.
2 albums in, and he's already playing that card.
That's
already
right.
a diva. Love it.
I sort of respect him for that. So, and I do want to go and see him.
Great stuff. Anything else to add on that? Are you quite happy with what you've said there, Becky?
That's a good sum up, I think. But I definitely recommend, if that's the kind of thing that you like and haven't listened to him yet, I'd definitely recommend him.
Anthony, you would, from knowing your music and knowing what he does, I think you would quite enjoy it. I've
tried Ben Howard and failed to connect properly. This is only the first album, so on your recommendation, Becky, I'll listen to the second one and see how I feel.
Yeah, great.
Okay, well, Anthony, do you want to jump in next?
Okay, yeah, well, a man who needs no introduction, Paul Simon, has got a record called So Beautiful or So What. I think it's his most recent one. And generally when I listen to a record, I listen to it a lot. So it's pretty much the only thing I've been listening to. Have any of you heard it?
Nope.
No.
I listened to the song called that just before we came online.
Oh, okay.
So that was the first time I'd heard it.
Good bit of homeworking there, Becky. Well done.
So tell us about it. Is it classic Paul Simon? Do we know what to expect?
Yeah, it is. This is the weird thing that you could fill an hour talking about it, or you could just say, this is classic Paul Simon. I think that maybe the pertinent thing about it is that he deliberately went back to writing the songs with an acoustic guitar rather than, writing them using the studio as his instrument, which is what he's been doing for a long time now, I think. And the weird thing is that in some ways, I think from a songwriting point of view, maybe it isn't quite as strong as his last record, but somehow, as far as the critics are concerned, they're putting it up there with some of his best work. So I don't know whether I'm missing something or, it's just a taste thing, but I think it's a really interesting observation.
Could it be timing? Has there been a decent enough gap between the last record that there's less fatigue on his work? Because often when bands disappear for a while, there's more of a craving for it.
I don't think so. I think it was probably less than 5 years. And the one previous to this, for me, is definitely better in the songwriting front, even if not so much on the production.
Okay, so you say you're a binge listener then? When you find a new record, that will repeat?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll play it until everyone's sick of it but me.
Unless you do get sick of it, in which case maybe you've gone too far.
Yeah, exactly. And then it goes on the blacklist for, way too long. It's all or nothing.
Fair enough, okay. Thank you very much for that, Anthony. Paul, Canadian Paul, what have you been listening to?
Oh, the Canadian Paul. That's me, I guess.
Yep.
I've got 3 CDs on the go right now, but 2 of them pretty much just really to study the art of songwriting, and they're the classics. Of course, the Beach Boys' greatest hits and George Jones' greatest hits, and so those have been sort of my more of a scientific study on listening to those guys. The one I'm really getting into, though, is Stevie Ray Vaughan's greatest hits, which I think everyone recognizes that name.
Was that Boydie in the background there?
Oh, yes.
Sorry, carry on, Paul.
And, primarily I'm listening to this just for the enjoyment, and hopefully through osmosis or something, I'll get to be a better guitar player. It's got a little bit of maybe you'll rub off, but some of the amazing stuff on this, like Pride and Joy, Tightrope. He does a version of Little Wing, which is a long Jimi Hendrix song, but you just can't listen and not listen to the whole thing.
Is it true that he uses gauge 13 electric guitar strings?
Yeah, I'd heard that he uses heavy gauge strings, and I can't imagine how strong his fingers must have been to play an entire evening with these things. But it gives him that really solid, raunchy sound.
I've heard the same. Definitely. I've heard the same from guitarists coming through the studio that he definitely uses the heavy gauge on his. Is it mainly Fenders he plays?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Fender Strat.
Yep. I suppose if you lower the action, you can still get the bending going on, because he certainly does. But so, Paul, what is it about his playing that really engages you?
Well, I'm still trying to figure that out, actually, James.
Okay.
There are just some artists that you listen to and you just know that they're extremely good, whether they're recommended or not in the industry, and you just listen to this guy play and you can't but enjoy it.
Is it an enjoyment or an appreciation or both? Because the only reason I say is that sometimes when I've been recommended virtuoso guitarists, I hit play and straight away it's a case of, wow, this guy can play, and 2 or 3 minutes down the line I've tuned out because they're not songwriters or they're not engaging in the way that works for me. Is Stevie Ray someone for you who does both?
Definitely both. Yeah, I'm with you on listening to some virtuoso. It's sometimes they just can't connect emotionally to the listener, and after a while you go, yeah, I'm impressed with how fast his fingers are moving and his technique, but it's move on to the next CD time.
Yep. I see what you mean there. Well, you've sold me on delving deeper there. So for those that don't know a huge amount of his work, what songs would you recommend to start with?
Well, this greatest hits CD, I guess, would be a great start. It has everything that I'm familiar with on it. So,
obvious but good answer there. Start with the greatest hits and follow on from there. Great stuff. Who hasn't been? Boydie, you haven't been yet. So
yeah,
tell us about yourself.
Is scuttlebutting on the greatest hits?
Scuttlebutting? I don't think so.
I remember having to learn that. It was an awesome track. Really, really good. So check that one out. Scuttlebutting.
Scuttlebutting. How did your learning that go? Did you nail it?
Great. Yeah,
It
falls into place.
Couple of listens, you're sorted.
Yeah, it's really fast and sort of mental, but around that's the beauty of it. It's around simple shapes, but it's the feel that you get in for that country.
He is a field guitarist, though, isn't he? Even though he's got the chops. That's what makes him stand out, I think.
Yeah, but I didn't go with 13s for that.
Oh, shame.
So I've popped it up a bit. I've been listening to Clean Bandit. You might know them from their collaboration with Jess Glynn on Rather Be.
I know that song very well.
Yeah, the biggest one.
Yep.
That's what drew me in. I thought, I really like that. I mean, I like Jess Glynn's voice anyway, but I sort of particularly like the production and the writing. And dug behind it, and it turned out, without knowing it at all, that there's a big string part at the beginning of that track.
Yep.
And that carries on through the whole album. So it's sort of like a mix of classical string music mixed with electro dance, sort of Disclosure meets Mozart. It's a really fantastic album.
Yep, I've had a listen. Has anyone else heard the stuff here?
No, but I want to now.
Yes, I wasn't expecting it either. Really, really good.
Kind of in the style of classical writers, or is it actually taking classical music?
Well, their 2010 single was called Mozart's House, so it's a definite, proper, not just a few little motifs. It is actual sort of fusion. It's really good.
Okay.
Is it their current album you're listening to, Paul?
Yeah, New Eyes is the album.
I had listened to that in the car driving up to Shropshire recently, and what stood out for me is that it gets quite oddball in places, doesn't it? It to the point where, because obviously they're working with different vocalists with many of the tracks. Obviously, Jess Glynn's on there at least twice, if I remember correctly. Yep. And I mean, as you say, she's stunning. I saw her support Khalees in the summer, and she was just it's like a huge bonus to get the support artist that I was actually wanting to see anyway. I would have gone to a gig just for her. And yes, she's got some pipes on her. Fantastic vocalist. But some of the other vocalists and some of the songwriters on there, it goes quite odd. It goes quite avant-garde in places.
It goes avant-garde, and there's like a sort of Jamaican-y type bouncy track. It's got a real happy vibe. Even the sort of avant-garde stuff maintains this uplifting feel.
Okay, the question I have for you, because I listened to it once, and a couple of tracks I think I had to skip because I was in the car and I was listening along, and there's some really strange kind of detuned synths used in places, and almost towards the point of uncomfortableness, do you know what I mean, where the tuning feels odd with the track. Have you experienced any of that?
No, I didn't get that at all.
Oh, okay. Well, it might have. Well, I was going to ask you, was it date? Sometimes when I hear this in pop music where they use detuned synths, it's a case of, is that on purpose? I don't feel right here. And then after a couple of listens, it feels perfectly as it should be, basically. So I was just asking, does it all settle in and does it all become a very cohesive unit for you?
Yeah, no, for me it was really good.
Oh,
nice surprise.
Brilliant stuff. And can we all excuse them for the Cortana advert on television? Or I don't think they could ever be excused for the most awkward 20 seconds of television we've ever seen. But
that really is poor.
I've got a phone with Cortana on it, but I didn't buy that because of that.
Oh, I just don't know how the advertising, how they let that through. It's painful. Do we
Didn't
all?
they?
Apologies, Paul, across the Atlantic.
Was that is that a commercial?
It's a commercial by Microsoft that uses this band, and they sit there talking to Cortana, which is their version of Siri. And yes, it's very painful to watch.
Aren't they the same
Becky,
band that did the John Lewis music?
Paul?
Which
John Lewis. Oh, you mean the advert for the Christmas?
Yes, sorry, the John Lewis. No, not the Christmas, the current one. Or is it? No, it's Marks and Spencer.
Yes, that is the Marks and Spencer. That's the string parts that.
Oh yeah.
Some good stuff. That string part.
Yep.
Yeah, but the whole album's got loads of that string part. I think the band was formed between a couple of them. Some had like electronic backgrounds, and then it was Amin Smith was leading a string quartet with Chatto, which were the others, and then they fused with these other band members. So it is a genuine fusion of real strings, electro. I think it's great.
Okay,
the thing that I picked up on with I think it was listening to the new single Stronger? Is that current single? Anyway, the thing that kind of jumped out at me was the sort of retro synths, like sounding like kind of 80s 90s arcade game type of sound.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, I didn't really like it, to be honest, but there you go.
They speak highly of you.
Is that perhaps where their name comes from then? Because you've got Clean Bandit, that they're going from two ends of the spectrum. Clean, classical, Bandit, electro, maybe.
Well, I did read it was from a translation of a Russian phrase, meaning complete. Bastards.
Sounds very arty. I like it.
Yes, but utter rascal they prefer.
Good stuff. Okay, anything else to add there, Boydie?
No, just a really enjoyable listen.
Good stuff, and plenty of production notes there for you.
Lots of that going on.
Yeah,
they're very disclosure-like. It was, if you like, the disclosure type stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah, it's definitely interesting sonically. They're brave in what they were doing. As I say, when it goes into the oddball, it's definitely engaging. But it's probably the kind of thing that you can't half listen to, which is why they've been very good at choosing their singles, perhaps, and for the stuff that does work immediately. Great. Right. Well, I'll go last then. I'm going to talk about an artist called Kate Miller-Heidke. I hope I've said that correct. It's Kate Miller, Heidke. I've actually just posted a blog about this on jamesnighthawk.com. Quick plug there. For those that want to read the review, I went to see her live in London's Union Chapel in Islington, one of my favourite venues in the east of London there. And she is a Australian singer-songwriter who doesn't come over here too often, but I've managed to see her twice in the last 2 years. I was first put onto her because she toured with Ben Folds a couple of years ago, and a friend of mine went to see that gig and came back and obviously loves Ben Folds, but couldn't stop talking about this support artist. I'm going to ask, but I'm guessing no one's heard of her. I'll be very impressed if anyone has.
No, hadn't until you mentioned her, but then I did go and look her up.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as the style goes, she's very interesting because she was originally a classically trained artist. She was singing in operas and arias, etc., in Sydney Opera House, and she was a full-on classical singer. And then in her mid-20s, she then started moving towards popular music, and she's released, I think it's 4 albums now, with her husband, Kier Nuttall, and she now tours generally just the 2 of them. But on the album, it's a full production because I think one or both of them are producers as well. And she sings generally in a standard female singing voice, but every so often drops into classical stylings. So you'll get that really over-the-top singing to juxtapose against the standard vocals going on. And the track off her newest album, Vertigo, it kind of goes into kind of quasi-yodeling at one point in the chorus. And the ending was described as, the ending she said that a fan had described as Enya on crystal meth, which, and if you listen to it, if you want to listen to one track, do start with that one, Vertigo. Boydie, you'd like the production and the song. It's very much a pop song, but with one hell of a quirk, because as I say, she yodels in it. But it fits perfectly. And she can do it live, pitch perfect as well, because obviously a background of classical singing means she has a fantastic ear. And she does the thing of leaning back from the microphone when it's time to sing classical, because obviously the volume comes up when you're singing right down from the diaphragm, as opposed to us cheeky pop singers that do a lot of that from the front of the mouth. Very catchy songs. She has a lot of fun with her music, obviously having that contrast. There was a cover of Psycho Killer, which was all staccato and creepy, and then with the fa-fa-fa part was then sung in a classical opera voice, obviously. And yeah, she's just an absolutely fantastic singer-songwriter with some very interesting styles. And one of her songs, which is particularly lovely, it's called Caught in the Crowd. It's now used by the Australian School Board as an anti-bullying song. The lyrics go, "I was young and caught in the crowd, didn't know then what I know now. I was dumb and I was proud and I'm sorry." And it's just a very quaint but to the point lyric, which the whole lyric of the song is talking about things she did and now regrets as a grown-up when she was a kid. So she can obviously write very, very human songs and very quirky songs as well. So that's my left of field recommendation for this week for anyone who wants to check her out.
I wish I'd explored that further because, hearing someone mixing up a bit of opera with the pop sounds really good. But the song I heard was,
which one did you go
without being
for?
harsh, I don't know what it's called, but I wrote down on my notepad, sounds a little bit like a second-rate Regina Spektor.
Okay. Well, the thing is that she does write in lots of different styles. I mean, the newest one is quite... The drums are very kind of 80s electro, and it's quite pop-orientated. But from the first album, she was far more piano-vocal, which is probably more close to what you're saying with the Regina Spektor idea there. But, I mean, it might be not to your taste, or it might just be that it wasn't a good one to start with. But
send me a playlist.
Start with Vertigo, the track off the newest album, and then that's kind of a good mix of poppy and quirky. And if that doesn't work for you, then maybe she's not for you. So
anyone that's brave enough to put yodeling in a pop song, it's got to be listened to.
It's definitely unique. I haven't heard it elsewhere. So
I was going to mention that when I had a listen, I think I only listened to one track and just selected at random, but it was quite country sounding. The vocal anyway was quite country sounding. And then I was watching on YouTube, and towards the end of the video, she stabbed herself in the chest, which was rather odd.
Okay.
But definitely got my attention.
Well, I don't watch music videos, so maybe I should check that one out. But yeah, she's had Billboard #1s in Australia. And as I say, she has artists like Ben Folds who talk very highly of her, having her tour with them. But she's not really a hugely known artist. I mean, I saw her play last year in Islington again, but in a venue with maybe 90 people in there. So she's very much under the radar over here, which is strange because Brits, we like our quirky pop music. So I'm amazed she hasn't taken off a little bit more. But obviously breaking a market is quite a job for people. Great. So let's move on to the news. Anthony, take the helm, please.
Okay. So going for a slightly less sensationalist, more serious journalism this week, or this episode rather. First thing I noticed, there is and there my memory completely goes. What's the word? There is a promoter by the name of Harvey Goldsmith. He's a big shot. He books some really big acts for some really big festivals. And he's come out of the woodwork saying that he thinks the age of the big summer music festival is coming to an end because all the top headlining acts are starting to, disappear. And there's nobody coming up from the shadows to replace them. So he's saying once the Stones and, Madonna and The Who and whoever else are going on these big stages are gone, there's not going to be anyone to fill the gap. And we're going to be left with, I don't know what, no more festivals, smaller festivals, worse music. I'm not sure what the implication is, but he seems pretty serious about it.
Okay. Anyone want to jump in with any thoughts on that?
I think it's way off base, personally.
I agree. Carry on, Paul.
Yeah. It just... there's plenty of acts that are touring at the moment. I don't think touring now seems to be the mainstay of the income, with record sales down or with unit sales disappearing. Touring is a big income, and there's massive tours going on. Okay,
let's do an exercise here. In your own time, let's just say names. First two that come to me: Muse, Mumford & Sons. Two straight away that are headlining festivals and are still very much in the prime of their career.
I think Muse was cited in the article in the Guardian about it, in that they are kind of like, or they're set up as the last in the sort of run of big name headline acts for festivals, and that they might be the dying breed.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been around since about 97, 98, something like that. So they are kind of veterans.
Yeah.
I think Muse and Arctic Monkeys were given as the exceptions.
Arctic Monkeys, yep, that's another one.
But I just watched the Radio 1 weekend with, and he made a great deal about it. It was hilarious. Dave Grohl and Foo Fighters being supported by Taylor Swift. That was he kept referring to it as hilarious, but both of those just fantastic.
Yep.
I mean, there's one way of reading this which maybe kind of just sounds like an old man talking about his career. Maybe he's worked with all these people and, he's not finding anyone that wants to work with him who's a big name, because maybe they're all like pop acts or hip hop acts or people who've got their own networks who are just working with other people.
Yep, it could be very much a reflection on his connections. Or it could be a reflection of the fact that maybe the stalwarts, the Stones, Paul McCartney, the Who, that are sticking around, maybe because they're sticking around, it's not letting other acts come through.
Maybe.
So James, gone.
I was just going to say, was it last year that the Stones were Glastonbury closing on the Sunday, or was it the year before? I've lost track. It was
one of the two.
One of the two. But if you're going to put the Stones there, then you can't put someone else. So they've got to go away in order for other acts to come forward. Just to play devil's advocate to the idea there.
That's a very good point.
I think there's more, it's the volume as well. There's much to be a bigger act now. You don't have to be megastar. You can just have a global smash overnight. So a festival that might have had about 6 or 7 people with regular number ones and big albums, it's now probably 40, 50 acts that have been big over the last couple of years. So I think there's fewer acts, but still with the bigger hits.
It could be that the market's changing there, definitely.
I can't ever see Stones being a B band.
No, it is a case. When we say step down, I think it's kind of stop entirely as opposed to moving down the stage. So yeah, right. You've got a point there. How do we keep? If you're going to have Paul McCartney or you're going to have the Stones, they pretty much have to headline. So, or it could be. Sorry, carry on, Becky.
I was just going to, taking a different tack, sort of suggest that there are so many festivals now that it doesn't look to me like like festivals are dying.
Hell no.
There are more than ever, but maybe the result of that is that the bigger acts are spread more thinly across them.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah,
that's a good point
too.
Or it's the same acts at the different festivals, because there was a run of them where it was always the Foo Fighters close, and it was the same artist just touring around the different. It was like a tour, like the greatest acts tour.
Well, we can't all go to every festival, so if they are going to jump around the festivals, then it means that everyone gets to see them. So.
Oh yeah. Not as a bad thing, but there's less. Like I say, these big I agree that there's less big headline wow acts, but the festival seems to have adapted with lots of, like I say, lesser, but bigger number with lesser hits.
Yeah, I think maybe more than the festival dying, maybe just the idea of how the festival works is changing as music always changes, and perhaps it's just a case of the number of acts spread across these festivals has to be accounted for, and maybe it's giving more of a chance for grassroots music to come up as well, which is no bad thing. So maybe as a promoter, he's just seeing that his big ticket artists are the ones that are disappearing, but just allowing at the bottom of that tree more of the roots artists to come through. So I don't see live music, as Boydie mentioned there, it's flourishing, it's strong, people love live music, and with sales disappearing, going to streaming, it's as vital as it's ever been, if not more. So I don't think it's time to start getting worried about this kind of stuff there.
There's also perhaps a link back to one of the topics in our first podcast where we were talking about hip hop being a headline act at festivals, and so it's not necessarily that there are any huge guitar bands coming through, but you don't need the headline act to be that anymore. It can be an electronic act or a hip hop act or whatever.
Yep.
Or a pop act,
So yeah, maybe we are thinking of the classic Glastonbury headliner, the Woodstock headliner of the rock and roll artist, as opposed to any other style of music.
Yeah.
Good thoughts all around there. What's next there, Anthony?
Well, it kind of leads directly into the next news item, which I kind of summed up by asking you all, do we think that music is turning into coffee? Okay. By which I mean the cultural position that music occupies, according to this article by inference, which I should just summarize. Apparently we can't print enough vinyl. There's such a demand for it. It's gone up by 100 times in the last 2 years, that they're struggling to find factories to print vinyl.
100 times or 100%?
100-fold.
100-fold?
Yes.
Okay.
So it seems to me that there is a certain kind of listener who probably enjoys a certain kind of music that wants to hear it on vinyl. Maybe there's some correlation with what festivals they buy tickets for, but it seems to me that there's a kind of connoisseurship happening in music, of which vinyl seems to be the kind of totem pole, if you will.
We've got the hipster argument coming through soon enough here, haven't we?
That's cool again, isn't it? Boy, it's cool again.
Yeah. Paul, have you noticed any of this across in Canada? Has vinyl started appearing on the shelves in... I don't want to even take a guess at the name of the shops, so...
No.
Okay.
in a word, I guess I'm not really frequenting, bricks and mortar type record shops. I don't think very many people do anymore, but maybe it's all vinyl, people looking for vinyl that are doing it now. I don't know.
Okay, well, I was down on Charing Cross Road in London on Friday, and I went into FOP, which is a small chain, which is, I'm sure, a subsidiary of HMV. Someone can correct me if that's no longer the case. And the main wall as you enter is now 100% vinyl.
Wow.
You have to go further back to see the CDs. And I saw the Laura Marling album, which is there for £8 on CD, or you could buy the double vinyl at £26.
Wow.
Yes. And vinyl is back. And as you say, there is a lot of the connoisseur going on with it. It's the collectability. Now, I don't say that in disdain, because if that means that people are putting their money towards music and they're eschewing the we're never paying for anything, I'm having Spotify and nothing else, then let them do it. I'm still a CD fan. I buy CDs. I pretty much immediately rip them to my phone and then play them predominantly off of there. But I do like putting CDs on, and I like owning the CD. So I don't go as far as vinyl, but not to say I wouldn't. Let's carry on around the group. Becky, do you download? Do you buy wax? How's it for you?
I don't think I've ever bought vinyl, and I can't see myself starting to, really. I haven't bought CDs for quite a few years. I sold all my CDs.
No, you don't want to do that.
A few years ago, and now I don't. To be honest, I don't buy very often, but when I do buy, it's downloads. I don't have a streaming account, so it's downloads.
Boydie, you're downloads and streaming, aren't you?
I'm downloads, yeah. Ripped my whole, took me ages, but I've ripped my whole CD collection into iTunes.
Right.
And everything I buy now is, well, sometimes it's cheaper, can you believe, to buy the CD, get it posted, and then get the free downloads via Amazon. So I do that quite a lot, and somebody gets a nice present. Or the convenience of just doing it straight off of iTunes.
Yep.
Sort of the odd song on it.
Paul, what about yourself?
So, no, I don't. I didn't even realize that vinyl was making a comeback. Does that mean that people are buying phonographs? Is that what they call it?
I don't think.
To play,
I would love to walk into a shop and ask where their phonograph section is. Brilliant. Love it. Absolutely love it. No, record players are still being sold, and people are spending a lot of money on diamond-tipped styluses. Is that the plural of stylus? I think so.
I think it is.
I'm not sure. One of those. People are spending a lot of money on these things, and the record player is back. There's a certain theatre to putting a record on, though, which we don't have anymore. There's a friend of mine who's a huge Apple fan and very much at the cutting edge of technology, an Apple Watch on day one and an iPhone every year. We were walking around a record fair, and I turned to him saying, "Do you mind if I have a look?" And he went, "No, it's fine. I actually understand vinyl." And I was thinking, what are you talking about? It's like, well, it's not for me, but there's a certain theatre to put in a record on, which you don't have with any other form of music. With a download, you just swipe on your phone and hit play. Whereas if you want to listen to a record, you have to take it out carefully, place it on the turntable, put the stylus on. You've got to have put time aside for that, as opposed to just hitting play and then carrying on with your life, basically. So I quite like that aspect of it. That would be one positive I'd say for it there.
Yeah, and the ability to put it on at the wrong speed, which is brilliant.
Well, DJs have been, the DJs aren't ever going to go from vinyl because it has, that kind of musical manipulation side of it. Great point there, Becky.
Well, they are using files, though, aren't they? There's digital decks, and you can still get the tactile mixing of files and scratching with digital. So it's about.
Yeah, it is. Yes, there is that option, but I think there will be people that will, for at least our lifetimes, always use vinyl for DJing. There's something about it there, but apparently it's coming back elsewhere. Anthony, what about yourself? You're the last one to chime in here. How do you buy your music?
I buy it on CD, but I think that vinyl is definitely a future option. Not only for new music, but it's amazing what you can find in secondhand shops on vinyl. And probably how much I would have bought if I had a record player. The temptation to maybe get your own music pressed to vinyl, as a vanity project, it's definitely rattled around the old brain more than one occasion. So watch this space.
Is there any fancy technology where if you've bought vinyl, you can digitize it and put it to your phone or wherever you want it?
Right, there's two. Yes, you can get decks which will have an aux out and you can then feed that into a computer and do it in real time. But with new music going across, just because I noticed it again on Friday, if you do buy the £26 album for whichever artist, it will be a code inside, in the same way that Boydie was saying that when he buys his CD, download code comes with it. So yes,
because vinyl requires its own mastering process anyway.
It should require its own mastering process. It doesn't mean all artists do, because there are some artists which should put the same master, the same WAV directly through. It should be more softly mastered and more dynamically mastered, but it doesn't mean it always is. So that's something that the vinyl connoisseurs often talk about on forums, which vinyl is worth buying for the audio quality and which one is just a collectible. Because yes, you do need it does need to be mastered twice with more white space effectively to allow that to bounce around more, because it no longer has to compete in the loudness wars, because what are you competing against? It's not like it's on an iTunes playlist going back to back with another song. So it can be mastered exactly how you want it to. So
there is also, linked to that, there is also a school of thought that the quality of vinyl, not just the quality of the sound, but the actual quality of the material that a record label is going to commit to put on vinyl is going to be higher, because the investment and having to get it all pressed, whereas they can knock out any old tosh on, like an indie label could knock out a digital file on iTunes. So there's a real commitment to thinking, this is good enough to go on vinyl. Therefore, the material theoretically should be stronger.
Arguably, and I mean, it's a step. It's digital, then CD, then vinyl, in that order of the commitment to it. Is that what you're saying, Boydie?
Well, it's just that from the label's point of view, they can release quite easily. But to actually give the vinyl option is quite a commitment.
Good point there. So we have one more story, Anthony.
We do, and this one's a real beauty. So we all know who Tom York is, frontman of Radiohead and various other projects. So I read in the news that Yeah, he's just created a song which lasts for 18 days, and it's called Subterranea. It's part of a artist's exhibition. It's like an installation. But yeah, if you've got free half a month, I don't know, give him a ring and see if he'll send you an MP3.
Half a month and change. Do you know more about this song? Is this 18? Is it actually 18 days worth of individual music? Is there trickery being involved using loops, using repeating patterns, phasing?
I don't believe it's a single bit of audio that's looped just to make up 18 days. I don't have as much information as I'd like about it, but I would imagine that there is obviously some significant repetition, but I don't think it's, say 6 hours just on loop. I think that it is a continuous piece of music that does evolve over the entire length of its performance.
Brilliant.
How long does it get to take to get to the hook? 3 days.
It's bass drum for 5 hours, just as the intro.
Yeah,
a straight 4. Yes. A straight 4. You get the snare after 4 hours for another 2.
Apparently, James, no minute is the same.
No minute is the same, but
no minute is the same.
A minute is a long time, though. So a minute within itself.
Not within 18 days.
No,
yeah, not in the context.
Boydie, let's go to you here. This is probably the antithesis of what you
pretentious.
See. Yes, there we go.
Arty-farty, yeah.
Does anyone
Not interested.
Does anyone have any background in anything like minimalism or kind of music concrete or anything like that, where the music does, the boundaries do skew? We're talking the Steve Reichs and the Philip Glasses of this world, where the pieces could be measured in hours rather than minutes. Does anyone have any background in this?
Oh, I really like that music, but I wouldn't say I've got a background in it.
Oh yeah, but are you aware of it?
Oh yeah, I really like Steve Reich, and Philip Glass is one of my favourite musicians.
Now, I can't quote whether it's one of those two or one of the other. I think there's a group of 4 or 5 of those minimalist artists, which I did some study on at university, and I never went to, but I was informed of, and we discussed, and I've read about the concerts that would go on for hours, and it would be, some of the tracks would be loops, but they're not exact loops because they use phasing, where one loop will be 18 beats long, one loop will be 19 beats long, so it goes across itself in an odd phase, and then you add in more on top of that. And you were kind of supposed to kind of come into the room at your leisure, sit down, enjoy it for a period of time, and come and go. Apologies if I've offended anyone of that kind of music. That's how I remember it. You weren't expected to just be there for the full 12-hour session. It was supposed to be something that you enjoyed in a mildly hypnotic way. So does potentially this Tom York piece has a similar vibe to it, because obviously no one's expected to survive 18 days straight of a concert.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think Boydie's comment about it being arty and pretentious is fair game, but I also think that without people like Tom York or Steve Reich or anyone who's making music that deliberately pushes the boundaries of how you listen to it, then invariably you're limiting what interesting ideas filter into the mainstream and enrich the music that we all like, even be it in tiny microscopic homeopathic quantities, for want of a better word. So yeah, it probably is annoying to listen to if you try and spend as long as you can stay awake listening to it. But as a project and as a statement of musical intent, I think it's like grandiose and brilliant.
Good
so
words,
have you heard some of it?
No.
And do you know how obviously it's quite demanding in terms of or challenging in terms of the way people should or could listen to it, but maybe even more interesting how it's performed. Do you know anything about that?
Is it a recording? I'm assuming it's not a live performance for the 18 days.
I'm assuming it's not a live performance because
and would never be, I guess.
Well, we could write to him and see if he'll put the gig on, but I think we'll have trouble selling tickets.
even amongst the 5 of us here. Yeah, well, as you say, I agree. You have to do the crazy and the arty and the over the top. to get noticed and to get things that filter downwards. I mean, the Beatles were influenced by, they did Revolution 9, which is effectively an electroacoustic music concrete piece, also known as the most skipped track in the Beatles catalogue. But it's something that affected mainstream artists and then would make other artists consider using found sounds as opposed to sticking to standard instruments. So these sweeping gestures need to still exist in an arty, pretentious way, Boydie. But in order to shake things up a little bit. And I think that's probably what's going on here. And all credit to him for it.
I think I'd be more interested in it if it pushed the boundaries in the other direction. So if someone were to say, okay, I've made a song here that's 1 minute and 20 seconds or 20 seconds or even 5 seconds, how short can they go and still have an emotional connection to your audience?
Wasn't Anthony? We had a competition on the forum a couple of years ago, a short song. Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, we did.
I can't remember anything about it. I can't
pick any details out of my old rotten brain, I'm sorry.
But yes, Paul, you have a point there. Going to the other end of the spectrum, entirely valid. And I like it when I'm listening to an album and a song appears, verse, chorus, and it stops. I like that.
I do too.
It makes you stop and go, oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
I think I don't know whether this was part of that competition. I don't remember it, but is it Nooms on the forum does some sort of minute and a half length songs? And
yes, he has done.
And to me they always work, but do kind of leave me wanting more.
But does that mean you're going to play it more often, as opposed to an 18-day track that you're not even going to listen to once?
So. That's right. Yeah.
Fair game. Right, guys, I think now's a good time to take a break. We've come to the end of the news, so we're going to stop here. For those of you listening on the podcast, I'm no doubt going to plug in our song here from Paul, and we will see you shortly. For our musical interlude this episode, we will be listening to One Too Many by Paul Tull, our guest this episode. You can listen to him as well at soundcloud.com/Paul Canuck. That's /PaulCanuck.
Patrons in the bar were getting kind of blurred. My waitress sinking hard about showing me the door. She said, I called the cab, he's right outside. You've had one too many, you should call this night a night. Taxi ride home gave me time to think, and I realized she was right about one thing. I've had one too many heartaches, heard one too many lies, one too many 2 a.m.s where I've laid awake and cried. One too many teardrops have fallen from my eyes. Love has disappeared on me one too many times. We pulled up to my townhouse, not a light inside was lit. Got out and thanked the driver, gave him a $5 for a tip. This house is just a place now, not a home. And I have to learn to face this life of living on my own. Soon I've got Jack Daniels in my hand, and all too often he's my only friend. I've had one too many heartaches, heard one too many lies, one too many 2 a.m.s I've laid awake and cried. I've come up empty-handed while reaching for the light, and love has left me stranded here one too many times. I only blame myself for all this hurt, and I know I wrote the book on good excuses, but when they added me to the mix in this old world, I'm the first one to times. Yeah, love has split my heart in two, one too many times.
And we're back. Welcome back to the Songwriter Select Podcast, Part 2. So we're going to hand you straight over to Paul Boyd, for our regular section for Anatomy of a Song. So Paul, what song are we looking at this time?
Okay, this time we're going to be looking at All About That Bass by Meghan Trainor. Actually written by Meghan Trainor and Kevin Kadish. Released as the lead single from her album Title. And it's her sort of step from behind the scenes as a songwriter to being the artist. I think I did hear that they were pitching it around, but decided between the two of them that she should give it a crack. And she certainly did.
She did indeed, and I can imagine that most people have heard this song quite a lot on the radio, if you are radio listeners. Radio 1, Radio 2, it kind of hit everywhere, especially in the UK. Paul, have you heard it much in Canada?
Well, I can't really say because I don't really listen to that genre, but presumably, I don't know.
Well, you must have the stats for us for the US, Paul.
Yeah, it hit the US charts, so it was number 1 there.
There we go. Good stuff.
So it's going to be the same in Canada, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Right, so what do we have to say about this song? We've got our information first from our friends over at Hit Songs Deconstructed. So what information have you filtered down from us from there? Yeah,
so the main thing that jumps out is that it's a retro/pop song. So they've fused a lot of retro elements. It's got a real 60s doo-wop girl group feel to it. But again, mixed with modern elements. So it stands out from its contemporaries. There was nothing like it in the charts at the time. It definitely stood out as a throwback, but like we discussed with Uptown Funk in a previous episode, there's those modern twists to it. The vocal delivery had sort of like a female rap contemporary feel to it mixed in. There were some sound effects. I think there's a tape stop effect over some of it, so it still retains that modern production values, but with a definite retro feel to it. Specifically the acoustic bass.
Yes, the acoustic bass is very prominent, and it helps it to that bass line to come through even on tinny speakers, because it obviously has the higher frequencies that kind of rumble across from that, as you say, that kind of acoustic bass sound there, which is obviously essential for the track being called what it is. So,
it is. It fits in quite well.
Although I did note at the time it was quite comical that a song called All About That Bass doesn't have a huge amount of low frequencies going on it whatsoever. Yeah. The bass, the kick drum is quite snappy, and the bass is quite treble happy. So it's really not all about that bass as far as the track goes. But only geeky people like us would have noticed such irony.
Well, I actually remember listening to it when I think it was Song of the Day or something on Radio 1, right back before it kind of hit the top spot. And so people text in with their thoughts on the Song of the Day. And I do remember somebody's comment being that there was very little bass in it.
Okay,
so
not
I
just
think
me
general
then.
listeners do notice these things as well, yeah.
That was James texting into Radio 1.
Yeah.
I will be heard.
I just want my moment in the sun. No, okay. Do we have some of the essential stats for this song?
Yeah, it's just over 3 minutes, so it's 3:07. Structure-wise, interestingly, starts with the chorus.
Yep.
So we discussed last time that a very common format, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, pre-chorus is the sort of standard. But this kicks straight in with the chorus. So
No intro.
No intro.
No intro. Bang, straight in.
Boydie, would you consider that in itself to be a retro throwback? Because if we think to the early 60s, there are plenty of songs that went, She Loves You, bang, straight in for the Beatles, and myriad other examples.
Yeah, completely. And it's a common form as well for them. Tempo-wise, we're up at 134. So sort of middling for pop. I think last time we were discussing tempo in a bit more detail with a slower funk tune. previously a correction for the last show. Shake It Off and Happy were up at sort of 160, so a bit slower than the contemporaries, but still moves along quite nicely.
Yep. And what about influences that, obviously you said it's got that retro pop styling about it, but for me it's very much that kind of, I want to say calypso, but I'm not sure if that's correct. It's got that kind of that movement on that middle section. What would someone else kind of label it as?
Yeah, it's a bit of reggae.
Yeah.
It's
Doo-wop.
Yep.
Yeah, doo-wop, I guess, would be what springs to my mind.
But it manages to mould that into the pop style so it doesn't go too far away from a classic pop styling, but it just manages to have a kind of a colouring from it. Would you agree with that,
Well,
Paul?
those parallel thirds in that, I think the section you're talking about, James.
Yep.
It really sounded like a melody from something else, but I was thinking calypso at the time too.
Yeah.
It just sounds like.
Okay, thank you. I don't feel so odd now. But yes, it felt like I've heard this before, as if it was pastiching upon something. But I enjoy it thoroughly. That's possibly my favourite part of the song, actually, when it goes into that section there, because it feels like it has gone somewhere else temporarily while still managing to cement itself in the song itself.
And some sweet harmonies in there too.
Indeed. Paul, well, most of us, in fact, many of us are guitarists. What do we think about the guitar work in the song? I quite like the fact that it's quite refrained and quite simple in the background. I think it's mostly on one side of the speaker, and it's nice to hear a guitar leading a track like this.
Yeah, nice, sort of clean and plinky plonky.
Yes, it gives its own little background counterpoint hooks going on there. But yeah,
I haven't even noticed the guitar in this track.
Oh, okay. It's definitely.
I'm sorry.
It's to the side, definitely. On the part of the song I'm thinking about.
I'm going to have to go back. I listened to it a bunch of times before we started recording.
I haven't made that up, have I, Boydie?
But I know it's floating around.
I can hear the piano quite prominently, sort of just on the 8th or 16th notes.
Is it the bit that kind of echoes the backing singers doing the shoe wop wop show what bit?
I think so.
Same melody, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a few places where the guitar's doing some work on it.
Yeah, there's a few lead lines, and the vocal actually matches the lead lines.
Yeah,
going into a few places that sort of hammers home some of the melodies.
Isn't there some sax in it as well?
Yeah. So
I noticed that.
Yeah, primary instruments, bass, claps, electric guitar, organ, drums, beat, and sax. That's the main thing that's going on.
It's also quite it's good in that it leaves some clear space in the song. There's plenty of times where, as you say, the sax is there, but then there's plenty of times where it isn't, and it doesn't feel the need to always be forward. It's a song that lets itself breathe and lets the vocal and the hook lines really come to the front, which is so essential for pop music, to let it breathe and let the listener access to get into it. It's not overwritten in that regard.
Or overproduced by a long stretch. It's a very sympathetic production for the song, I think.
Yeah, and actually I was just going to chime in with a few points I have from this, because I happened to be in Dublin when this song was being released. It was the end of the year, wasn't it, Boydie? The end of last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was October, November time. And Meghan Trainor was on the radio. She was, I was just listening to a track in a traffic jam. And then they did an interview with her, a good 20-minute interview. And a few things I took away from that. You mentioned that she's been behind the scenes writing, and she has had some hits with some fairly major artists. I can't remember any off the top of my head. But she's worked with some of the big pop stars. And this song, like all of her other work, was being touted around, as you say. And if I remember correctly, the response was that when the demo was sent around, people liked it, but no one wanted it, insofar as it didn't work. They might have tried a vocal on it and it didn't land for them. And it was then that her production team said, Meghan, your vocal is what makes this song. And I kind of agree with that. It is a quirky vocal. And she said on the interview how the vocal you hear, the main one, was actually a guide vocal they put down early on in the recording process, and they layered on that afterwards, because it was just Anthony just said there, it was an underproduced track. A lot of what you hear was part of the original demo. So it wasn't sent to someone, started from the ground up, and then super slickly put together. It's a lot of what you hear was original, throw down some ideas, let's hit play and record, and then there it came. So
that's really interesting, because I think sonically, it sounds really strange to me, this song. It's like, we talked about coming in straight with the chorus, and I think the song begins really well. I don't actually hear that bit as the chorus. I hear what you guys are calling the pre-chorus as the chorus.
Yep.
And then the chorus is just a kind of interlude. But as soon as it drops out of that melodic bit with the, parallel thirds and what you guys think is a bit calypso or whatever, and it drops down to the double bass and the claps and the vocal, she's singing so low, and the sound world changes so much that even though I get that it works, there's a part of me that feels like something they're trying to take too big a step between these two sections of the song. Am I the only one that gets that?
Well, I found that the vocals sort of supports you again, James. I don't know why I'm doing this, but
Carry on.
the vocals, the lead vocal, sounded to me like a first take. Like, I noticed that when she sings, she sings all about that bass, and she drops an octave every time she sings that line. But the bottom note on that octave always seemed to me like a little bit off, like maybe a little bit sharp, or maybe normally you would have heard that fixed in the mix, right?
Bingo. And I was about to say that the other thing that was mentioned during this interview was that it was an early take, and they said there's a lot of charm to it. And she said herself, even if vocally it isn't perfect. And you're right. In a sea of auto-tuning that we listen to on the radio now, what really stood out for me was she's not perfectly in tune. It kind of plays into the whole concept of the song, is that basically, if you're not perfect, you're still special. The whole thing is wrapped around that. So why fix these notes, when you think about it? And after a while, it didn't bother me. Indeed.
The first few times she did it, it's like you kind of thought, well, maybe they should have fixed that.
But it's endearing. It's not pitchy in a, something's off there, my shoulders are rolling. It's pitchy in a, that's a natural bit of portmanteau going on there. Sure. And I mean, this is a conversation which we can do one day as a featured discussion, I'm sure, about the way auto-tuning is changing music. And I've just, my quick point on it is I found it so odd that a device which is there to make us feel more comfortable with music does the exact opposite to me so often, where I can hear the auto-tuner correcting and removing bends in a singer, which if it were left alone, I'd feel much more comfortable with the mix. But instead I receive this square waved robotic singer that doesn't sound like a person, and I end up just analysing what the producer's done rather than listen to the vocal. And this is the antithesis of that, where the vocal is completely and utterly if someone's going to correct me, feel free. I can't hear any auto-tuning going on in this track at all, for exactly the reasons we've talked about. It sounds like a human take.
I think that's part of what gives it its kind of authentic retro feel as well.
Yep.
It's like a really natural, they couldn't correct tuning back in the day, but you just got a good, really solid vocal take, and it gives it a charm that you can't get with gadgets.
It's certainly not polished pop, is it?
No. What do we think about her voice? I like it on this track. I think it's charming and quirky and unique. And as you say, it's not perfect, but it works perfectly for this song. Becky, what do you think?
I'm a little bit torn, if I'm honest. I can't say I've noticed the tuning issues actually, but the tone of the voice does slightly grate me a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. I like it much more when she sings higher. I think the tone really warms up when she goes up into the upper register, but in that lower register, I find it a bit grating and whiny.
Her voice is clearly more comfortable when she's up higher, but maybe that slightly out of her depth, no pun intended, part of the lower register there is what makes it sound different.
Yeah, it's what gives it its sound, isn't it?
Yeah, and I can imagine that cover versions of this song would lack a certain something.
Apparently it was pitched to Adele and Beyonce. Can we imagine them singing?
No. No times two there.
Brilliant.
Although that does take us into the lyrics, though. Sorry, did I just steal your words there, Anthony?
Not at all, no. I was about to talk about the lyrics, so you go ahead.
No, I was about to hand it to Boydie, and because you just talked about two ladies, maybe, to whom the lyrics might apply. because if we talk about what the lyric is about there, I'll leave that to your lyrical ways there, Boydie.
I'll mention something quickly and quickly hand over to Tone. But yeah, so allegedly inspirational and empowerment is the sort of message I think that was intended. But interestingly, there was a bit of a backlash, I recall, in the press about it, sort of the complete opposite, putting down skinny people and glorifying being big. I don't know if anyone else picked up on that.
That was the point I was going to make, but I didn't see the coverage. I just listened to the song and thought, okay, this is about body positivity. But every time it gets to skinny bitches, I think, well, hang on a minute, you can't say everyone's perfect and then start having a go at skinny people. I get the point. I get what, it's tongue in cheek, and probably they didn't overanalyze it. It's just a good lyric that catches your attention.
There's also the next line. It goes straight into "No, I'm just playing." So
yeah, she does address that in the lyric itself, and in the interview that I heard, they brought up this exact point. It's like, well, it's all well and good to be body positive about being slightly bigger, but you do, by virtue of that, are you attacking skinny people? And she said, no, listen to the words. The next line is a comma, and it goes into, I'm only messing with you. I'm only kidding with you.
Okay.
And equally,
but
did we all notice?
Most people remember, though, is it? Most people will hear and remember the skinny bitches, and that is a little bit offensive.
Yeah, okay. The other thing that is being missed out here, has no one noticed the throwback to the Justin Timberlake song? Is that just me?
No.
I'm bringing sexy back. You other people don't know how to act. That's a lyrical reference, right? I'm amazed she hasn't been sued yet, going back to past episodes of the I'm bringing sexy back. You other something don't know how to act. I can't remember the exact words, but we know the song, right,
I'm
guys?
bringing booty back, isn't it?
That's what she sings.
What she says.
But the Justin Timberlake song is I'm bringing sexy back.
Right, yeah.
And that's what she's making a reference to. Because it's the same lyrics and the same cadence. The lawyers are listening as we speak and preparing a lawsuit. Because it is. Check it out, guys. It's the same line. And that's a reference to that Sexy Back, which is a huge Justin Timberlake song from the best part of a decade ago now. So
do you think they've researched fair usage and just slipped it in there?
Well, maybe not. And maybe she's going to lose all this money she's earned. Sorry. Sorry, Megan. We love you, really. But that's the point. He sung about I'm bringing sexy back, and he was doing it about, if you see the video, it's obviously Justin Timberlake and extremely sexy ladies kind of gyrating against him, as he tends to do. Whereas she was more the opposite. I'm bringing booty back. And she was doing a flip on it. But then immediately afterwards, the comma comes and she says, I'm only messing with you. And to me, that is fine. Yeah, okay, people might be offended. But if you're going to be offended by something, listen to the whole article. You can't be offended by one line and then stop reading. I
agree, but all right, if, say Ricky Gervais says something controversial.
Which he'd never do.
He's always getting into trouble, but he's always got a legitimate reason, right? He's always poking fun at people who are prejudiced. But if you say, skinny bitches, whatever, I'm only joking, that kind of doesn't cut it in my book. It's either you're poking fun at people who, are prejudiced or kind of who go against the grain of your message, or you're one of them. But I don't think she's nailed it from a political point of view, and I'm really sorry, because otherwise it is pretty much a perfect bit of songwriting.
Is there a chance that she didn't have any idea that this song was going to blow up as much as it did, and maybe she's gone, oh crap, I maybe would have focused on that lyric a little bit more if I realised people were going to be listening to it so closely?
Yeah. To put it in its full context.
Does that matter though? Because some people will have listened and potentially been upset by it, so does it matter whether it's millions or 10?
Yeah,
but to put it in its full context, though, it's go ahead and tell them skinny bitches that. No, I'm just playing. I know you think you're fat, but I'm here to tell you every inch of you is perfect from the bottom to the top.
Oh, so that's actually lovely.
Listening to everything. It is actually, even skinny girls think they're fat, but don't worry, everyone's perfect. So I'm with Megan on this one. I think
okay, Paul, you've already just sold me that it is a great bit of writing, and I take back what I said. But I do think...
But the line sticks out, you're right.
It does, and there's a fair point to be made here. Without reading it verbatim there, you missed the point. So maybe it's an issue of the mix or an issue of the cadence of the words that they didn't get that point across well enough.
Or maybe it helps sell the song, because people go, I can't believe she just said skinny bitches, I'm going to go and buy it and check.
True, people like a little bit of controversy.
I love it. Yeah.
But she's covered herself.
Lines.
She's covered herself on the lyric sheet there.
For me,
I like
the
that
use of the
lyric.
lyrics- yeah, well, the use of the lyric for me is sort of the modern slant to it. So she's using skinny bitches, got that boom boom, all the right junk, booty, all modern phrases mixed in with boys, mama that you'd get from a 60s song. So
Yeah,
I think by throwing those things in, it does sort of pique attention for those
definitely.
parts.
And it gives us talking points because we've been talking about it for over 20 minutes now. So good work, regardless. I mean, it is one of those pop songs which you might not love it. You might not love the vocal. You might find the chorus grating, and I think its omnipresence was to its detriment towards the end of the year, definitely. But that's nothing against the song. It's not the song's fault that it was overplayed. But yeah, I think it's a very solid piece of writing and a very interesting piece of pop.
And just to finish off, the title appears 20 times within the song, just to fit in with the other songs we looked at previously. And the other thing I wanted to mention was the use of harmonies in this seems to be the reverse of most songs. Usually you'd use a harmony to accentuate a word or a end of a phrase, usually at the end of a line. But this seems to be flipped completely on its head, where the no treble bit is the only bit that's a single vocal, and leading up to that, especially in the choruses, it's the opposite. There's a harmony leading up and then drops out for that part.
Which is why it sounds like that's the chorus, to me anyway. The pre-chorus. Very interesting.
Very good points and lots to talk about there. Anyone else have anything to add before we move on? I'll take that.
The only other thing I would say was, I was impressed at how quickly they get to the hook. No intro. It's in the first sentence pretty much, that the first line of lyrics.
Yeah, and I think that kind of economic writing is something to be looked at, because getting straight to that chorus is very often the opposite of what songwriters will want to do. We want to build towards something, whereas instead, why not just go for it?
If the chorus doesn't need a setup, then don't set it up. I think that's the rule here. Really, you can understand what she's talking about right away. Yep,
totally agree there, Paul.
It's funny what you just said about economic songwriting. I suddenly had a vision that this is like a Tory manifesto song, isn't it? I bet you will see that in the next election.
George singing it.
Mark my words. Yeah, George Osborne. He's going to be shaking his booty. It's like a race to the bottom.
Race to the bottom, oh god. We got the political puns here on Songwriter Select. You heard it first.
Right over my head, sorry guys.
We'll
explain it to you later, mate, don't worry.
Okay.
Great stuff. Well, I'd say that's a good time to move on. So we are going to move into our featured discussion this week. Now we have a pithy title this week, so I need to scroll down on my notes to find it. Courtesy of, who came up with this? I think it might have been a group effort. Yes, it was Paul Boydie giving us our feature discussion's pithy title here, which is, when writing lyrics, do you write from the heart, for the art, or aim for the charts? So that pretty much says the whole thing in the phrase there. What I'd like to discuss is, amongst the writers that we have with us, and for those of you at home, obviously, your thoughts, we'd love to hear about them afterwards. When you're putting a song together, how do you choose the lyrics? Is it very much a case of, I'm going to write what's on my mind now and what suits the song and how I'm feeling, and get deep into your own artistic being? Or do you write thinking, this is this kind of song and it will be appreciated with this kind of audience, so I'm going to write it in this kind of a way? So I'm going to hand back to Paul Boyd on this one, over to Boydie, as our resident pop writer, because I can imagine that we're going to have some skewed opinions and some not arguments, but difference of opinions today about how we all write, about how we all put our lyrics together. So, Boydie, take us away with how you compose your lyrics and what you're aiming for when doing so.
Okay. So for me, it's coming up with a strong concept first, and that for me is the most important thing. A message to communicate within the song. But then I would apply sort of songcraft, what's been learned from popular songs. There's a lot of discussion about rules in songwriting, and I think lyric writing, if you're writing for the charts or if you're writing for a song to get picked up by a publisher, then you do have to follow some particular sets of rules. And I do actually think those rules do help your song communicate to others, to connect to the song easier. So, for example, if you're writing for TV and film, obviously your lyric needs to be universal. It can't mention town names or locations or anything like that. It has to have a very universal appeal to increase its commerciality and chance of being used. If you're writing pop, it needs to be a sort of universal theme. So if you're writing from the heart, you might write your song about meeting someone, falling in love, breaking up, missing them. I would argue that from writing for the charts, from a pop point of view, the song should just have one single message. It shouldn't lead off into subplots or develop that much into different emotions. It should just be about meeting someone, falling in love, or breaking up, not the whole story in one. That's kind of where I'm at.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, let's hand over to Becky. How do you put your words together, Becky? Just a general premise of how you write.
Well, I think I started out writing very much from the heart. Whatever matters to me is all that matters when I'm going to write a song. And did a few songs like that, and then kind of got to the point where I thought, I don't want to just be this introverted and introspective. I want to test myself, try out different styles, and do some things that, challenge myself to see whether I can write something that has more general appeal. I don't know whether I've achieved that yet, but yeah, so I've tried different angles, I think, and I will continue trying different angles, I would say. I don't know whether I know the rules as well as Boydie does to achieve the chart side of things, but it's interesting to try it out.
Interesting points. Right. Anthony, yourself as a singer-songwriter, where do you grab your lyrics from, and how do you impose those onto your song, and how do you kind of meld those into a way that you want your audience to engage with them?
Impose is a really interesting word, actually, because it often feels like the lyrics are imposing on the song until they're right. Funnily enough, I agree with most of what Boydie says about lyric writing. I think the song needs to have a central message, even if there are other messages. Bearing in mind, anyone who's listening to me talk about songwriting for the first time should probably know that I'm not really interested in writing anything that's going to be in the charts. So according to Boydie's hooky little topic discussion name, I'm definitely writing for the art and probably for some of the craft as well. But yeah, I think there needs to be a central message that if you don't communicate it well, your song really suffers, and it can be really hard to put right, especially once those lyrics begin to bed in. But also the other thing I'm trying to do when I write words is to be believable. And that's a much kind of wider ranging, even subjective kind of thing to achieve, because I guess believability to some extent depends not only on the lyric, but on the melody and the vocal delivery. Yeah, I've already tied myself up in knots. I think...
Okay.
I think what I'm trying to achieve is something that you could read without the music and think, okay, that's interesting, or it resonates in some way. Is believable. But when you put it with the music, it becomes something greater than that.
Well, could it not be argued that with pretty much any piece of art or any piece of music or any painting or a book, that a central message is kind of vital to any of these formats? If you have a painting and it's showing us loss and mourn and decay, and you can't do that and at the same time be talking about the interrelationship between a man and a wife. You've got to have a central message, and you can have smaller messages around that. Do we agree? I mean, when if I read a novel or I'm watching a film, I want to know roughly what the point is of this piece of art. Is that, Boydie, is that kind of what you're saying when you say
no,
central
I'm
message?
being more a central message, not just a main message, a single message. So all about that bass, everything, all the other lyrics feed back into that central concept.
Okay.
So the title is Hammered Home, and Hammered Home, the title is the song, and the chorus sums up the title. There's a bit of development in the verses, but everything leads to the chorus, which is the hook, and arguably should be the title as well. So that's,
Now,
I'm centrally.
I'm with Anthony. I actually agree with you. I think that even in the world of singer-songwriters and writing away, avoiding the charts, not avoiding, but not aiming for the charts, a good song will need to resonate with a person, and if it's going to do that, it needs to be, what is this song about, and it needs to be there. I don't think I write songs with multiple messages. When I get going with a lyric, it's a case of, oh, I've got my idea here. This is going to be a song about X, and then I write for that. I don't take it into tangents, because that would just seem like an odd idea in general. I mean, a multi-themed song sounds like a bit of a nightmare to put together. So
I think it probably is. But here's an example. I was going to talk about this when I was doing the "What Are You Listening To Now" section. That Paul Simon record has a song called "Getting Ready for Christmas Day," so you can imagine what it's about. But there's a verse in there that says, "I've got a nephew in Iraq. It's his first time back," and it ended up how it began. I think that's the first line. But the line that's really interesting says, "With the luck of a beginner, he'll be eating turkey dinner on some mountaintop in Pakistan." And for me, the lyrics operating on so many different levels that every time I listen to it, my head sort of does a little mini explosion. So I think he's talking about people being away from the family at Christmas time and kind of how you're imagining what they're doing. He's also talking about conflict and how this guy's been to Iraq more than once. But also then he's saying on a mountaintop in Pakistan, he's making a sly dig at the fact that this war in Iraq somehow ends up taking place in a country that we're supposedly not at war with or not occupying.
that sounds like a subterfuge to me. It sounds like the song was never about Christmas and it was always about his political message, and he's sneaked it in there underneath.
I think it's about both. I think this is what really kind of bakes my noodle about it, is that the thing, on the one hand, it's just a song. You can almost throw it away if you want to. On the other hand, it's just about getting ready for Christmas Day, and you can get that out of it if you want to. Or you can stare at it until your eyes bleed and probably get whatever out of it that you can possibly dig out of your own imagination, because it just seems to kind of just, get in there. It digs in there and hangs on. And that's what I find really interesting about a lyric, is when it can somehow loom large, yet somehow just be a little detail within the song.
Good points. Paul, would you like to chime in with some thoughts about how you put your songs together?
Sure. I'm not going to say really anything new than what's already been said, but I think I quite often write to a lyric. I'll write the lyrics first, and then out of that, hopefully the lyric focuses on a message. But I have to connect to that somehow, and I think that's where the heart comes in. Like Becky says, you gotta have somewhere in your soul that connects to this lyric. And what I'll do is I'll put aside lyrics that I really don't connect to, as well as other lyrics that I do, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, entirely. I mean, this is all going back to a point I've got written down here, and I think, Paul, you've got it as well in your notes, that sorry, let's find a point here. If you just write to a formula and you're aiming to make people emote and make people connect, people can be quite cynical and they know when they're being sold to. Whereas if you write something from the heart, we are all people, and listeners are people themselves, oddly enough, and they have likely been through similar things in their life. So if you write from a personal point of view, you may well connect with people because it's a case of they may have been there themselves. And there's a reason why love songs and breakup songs are the two main types of songs that we write, because we've all been through both of these emotions. And by writing something that actually happened to you and you have an emotional connectivity to, you're more than likely to create something which has an emotional connection to the listener.
I disagree.
Oh, good stuff. Whereas I just have a feeling that people, when they listen to music, they can feel like they can sense when formulas are being written to and the lyrics are just. I mean, I cannot stand asinine lyrics and lyrics which are so clearly just grabbed off the shelf and clear, obvious rhymes that just make sense and fit a formula. But Paul, go ahead and disagree with me.
No, I agree. Bad lyrics are bad lyrics. I disagree that you have to write from the heart to write a good lyric. I think you can sit down and craft a good lyric with your thinking head.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that
I don't disagree with that either. I don't disagree with that either. I think that a lot of my lyrics are like that. That I think that they would be great for someone to sing that actually had been through the emotion or the connectivity or however you want to describe it. But for me to take that song further, I just kind of decide, no, you're not really connecting as well as I should be to make this into a song.
Interesting point. So what you're saying is that as an artist yourself, you wouldn't be able to sell these words you're putting down, but were it for someone else to perform, there's a chance that would be a saleable object.
Yeah, I think that pretty much says it.
Well, that makes sense because what Paul is saying, what Boyd is saying, is that if he's writing for someone else, he's more concerned about how that fits the song as opposed to how he fits it as an artist. And that's a very good point because Boyd is very explicitly writing songs to be sent to other people, whereas myself as a songwriter, I'm writing songs for me to perform on stage and on record as myself. So if I'm writing something which I don't believe, I'm not going to be able to sell it. So that shows two very different methods of writing and two different products at the end of the day. Boyd, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that one.
So we're basically we are arguing our own points, but for different usage, and that goes into an interesting point there. That is writing for a pop artist tangibly different to writing as a singer-songwriter? It sounds like an obvious question, but we should talk a little bit about it. I'd pretty much say yes. That if you're writing and if you have an artistic flow and you're releasing singles, albums, and you're performing in front of an audience, if the songs sound disjointed and it sounds like they're coming from multiple different places and there's no coherency there, then the audience is going to spot that. Whereas if you're a pop artist, people don't have the same expectations, maybe.
Yeah, well, it's much more cynical than that. So if a new artist or a label artist is looking for a song, the tip sheet given out would be, this artist is looking for a song, it must be upbeat, about clubbing, must not contain profanity, must cover these themes. It is very prescriptive of what they're looking for that artist. There is a brief, and here are some reference files. We want it to sound like this, this, or this. Go write it.
So we are going to be careful here not to move into the obvious conversation, which is pop music as art versus commercialism, mainly because we want to save that one for later down the line. But that is a little bit what we're touching upon here, that one is a product and one is an artistic statement.
I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I would say
that's
that
the extreme. That's the extreme, obviously.
Yeah, okay. I think what kind of comes to mind when we're talking about this, the difference between a song you write as a pop song for maybe a faceless as yet pop singer versus one that you write and sing yourself, is that singer-songwriter compositions tend to kind of be infused with the personality of the singer-songwriter or their stage presence, whatever they're projecting. If you're writing for a pop artist, you can't really get away with putting that into it because it's not going to resonate with how they want to present themselves, or is very unlikely to.
We've seen an example a few 20 minutes ago when we was talking about all about that bass. This was a song that she was touting, and none of the artists. This doesn't work with my remit. This isn't going to work for my fans. It doesn't fit. As we said, we all chuckled at the idea of Adele or Beyonce singing that song. Maybe in a parallel universe they did, but not in this one. And yeah, it just doesn't. We can see it not fitting with them. Whereas if we think of single ladies, we think Beyonce. We couldn't imagine
so
Adele
what we're saying
that.
Really is that All About That Bass is actually a singer-songwriter track.
I'd go with that.
Yeah, I'd say she has a message. She put it across. It has quirks. It has her personality in it. It's far closer to that than it is a pop production line pop song. So, and it's just nice that it resonated with the audience there. I'm
I
going to
think
jump.
maybe there's a difference between kind of ballad type songs and upbeat dancey songs, in that if a pop artist could do either, but with the upbeat tracks, the kind of art and the heart of it is less important anyway. But for a ballad, even for a pop artist, it needs to capture some sort of emotion very honestly.
The artist that comes to mind here is Pet Shop Boys. They were very much upbeat songs, and there's a lot of dance music going on there, but lyrically they would have very much a message going on. So there are examples of upbeat music doing that. And even in the pop genre, if you compare someone like, I don't hate doing this when I say names, but because it sounds like you're offending people, but if we take someone like Lady Gaga, who actually is very much a writer herself, and she has a message, she writes upbeat songs, but there's still a theme that goes through them, and she has a singer-songwriter message on a dance beat. So I think it can be done that way. I think there's more of a tendency for singer-songwriters to be more downbeat, but it doesn't have to be that way. And lyrically, I don't know how many writers work with someone like Lady Gaga, but obviously it is primed for the audience. It does it very well for itself. But there's still a central message which fits her message as an artist. So
yeah, well, her personality kind of is sort of pop with a slightly unusual twist, isn't it?
With an arty edge, yeah.
With an arty edge. So she can be a singer-songwriter and a pop star, and it doesn't seem incongruous. But for someone like me, I couldn't write a song and pitch it to Lady Gaga because she'd sound ridiculous singing it.
Unless she wrote something aimed at, unless you sat there and you thought, I'm Lady Gaga, which you often do, obviously, Anthony. And
on Tuesday nights.
You put yourself in her shoes, practice walking in the hills, and then write as her, which maybe is what potentially, Boyd, is that what you're saying? When you get these pitches, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the artist and think, I'm writing for this person. What do they want? What would they
Absolutely.
say? And that's almost a kind of ghostwriting in that respect, and an art unto itself.
And don't you have to kind of even get their samples of their stuff and emulate that as closely as possible as well? I mean, they really don't. They don't really want you to vary too much from their previous hits.
Yeah, so the mantra is different, but not too different. So everyone's looking for the next big thing, but nothing too much of a leap. So yeah, different, but not too different is the.
Do you know who the artists actually are that you're pitching for when you get these briefs?
Most of the time, yes, but often it'll be a lot of the pitches are for new artists, because to get a foot in the door with an established artist is incredibly difficult. So it's usually an up and coming artist, but you're told in the vein of the next Justin Timberlake or the next whoever.
Oh, okay.
So you do get a feel, but you're always given reference songs, 2 or 3 songs and links to YouTube of, they're looking for the song, must be an up tempo and it must sound like this. But you mustn't copy it.
Do you think this is very different from what was happening, in places like the Brill Building, where people are knocking out tunes? Is it a more cynical process now?
I don't know about cynical, because this is the beauty of the music industry. A really good song will get through. It's there's so much dross out there to write the hit, and the music industry is actively looking for hits, and if you write one, the chances are it will get through, but it is writing it that's the hard bit.
I think what I was getting at more is, you imagine someone like Carole King sat at the piano in some building somewhere, trying to find a great song. Was she thinking, I've got to write a song for, I don't know, the Righteous Brothers or something? Or is she just kind of going, I need to get something that feels good, and create a brilliant song, and then they'll find someone to sing it?
That depends on. Your question there is, has the job of the publisher changed? Because it used to be you sent songs to a publisher, and then they go, "This is a great song. It'll be good for X, Y, and Z," and then they push it forward. That middleman. Whereas now, Boydie, you're a very good example. You're cutting that middleman. You're getting the pitches directly. So you have to focus, you have to have that laser targeting, because you can't write a song expecting a middleman to pitch it for you. Am I correct, or am I off target there?
No, the people putting the pitches out are the publishers still. So your next port of call is the publisher, not the artist.
But what I'm saying is, could you just write a great song, send it to the publisher, and then they pitch that? It's the.
Oh yeah, those days are. You could do, but it's getting the.
You have to be pretty much signed to that. Yeah, you have to be signed to that publisher. They need to know that your work is good, because they can't sit there for ages trawling through it. Whereas in Anthony, in your example of Carole King, she was probably known by this point, and when a Carole King song turned up, the publisher would be excited for it, listen to it, and go, "Oh, this is going to be great for so and so. Let's get them on the phone."
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking more along the lines of back in the early days when she was just another staff writer with a whole bunch of other staff writers. She wasn't, a success in her own right with her own name, I suppose. So you've got a building full of people. They've all got a piano in a room, and they're all trying to churn out a great song. But yeah, I think maybe it's just the way the music industry is struggled to maintain its bottom line means that doesn't happen anymore, and what Boydie does is now the norm.
I'd like to take the discussion in one slightly different direction before we close up on this, because we could probably talk about this for some time. What I want to discuss here is, and I think we'll all have opinions on this, as much as we talk about being artistic and being true to thine self, etc., putting lyrics together, we also self-edit, and I know for a fact that when I write music, I want it to not only say what I want to say, I want it to say it well, and I want the poetry to be good. I want the rhyming scheme to work, I want the cadence to work, I want the held notes to have open vowel sounds so it works well at that point. Basically what I'm saying is that as much as I want to put my point across in my lyrics, I want to do it in a good song, as Boydie puts it, songcraft. I want to be able to make sure these lyrics scan well and everything is put in a good lyrical, poetic way. So we all self-edit with our music. We'll put the ideas down and then we'll tweak it to sound like a better song. Is that not in itself me writing in a way that I want it to appeal to the audience? Or is that just knowing good songcraft, which is a good way of putting a song together in the first place? Boydie, I'll bounce back to you on this because... I feel. Boydie, you know my music, and we don't want to do this thing where we talk about each other's music, obviously on the air. But
you say what I think about your music.
the nerve. But the point being that as much as I put myself as a singer-songwriter, I want that to be an appealing song that ends up on the other end. So I'm not aiming to be poppy, but I am aiming to be enjoyed. And I have no shame about saying that, because I consider that to be good songcraft. Whereas if I didn't self-edit, I'd potentially be putting down music which would just be very true to myself, but not interesting to anyone else. Yeah,
well, this is where I usually sort of get my defence back, is, when I say that there's rules in songwriting, everyone says, no, there's not. That self-editing is, I would argue, applying the rules.
Yep, I'd agree.
And as much as I love lyrics, but I would never post lyrics I've written. So the Songwriter forum that we all come from has a lyric review section, and I would never post my lyrics for review without the song, because I don't separate the two.
No, me either. I don't either.
To hear a lyric without the song, for me, just doesn't work. But I do agree about the songcraft and self-editing, and I've taken it to sort of the next stage. I have my own cheat sheet, which I've printed out when I'm writing lyrics, just to sort of check off the kind of things that I've picked up over the years and read in books and heard on videos and picked up, of just little pointers that I've distilled into my very own cheat sheet.
So going around the other singer-songwriters in the room, let's start with Paul in Canada there. Do you do the same thing? Do you go back to your words and then cut and craft and change around to make the song smoother, as opposed to just leaving your initial message there?
I only do that about 1,000 times.
Okay, so not too often then.
It's constantly right up to the point where, I get into my home studio and start recording. I'm constantly changing a word here, a word there, just to make things match up, and to make it flow.
Anthony?
pretty much the same. I'm someone who spends so long sometimes on lyrics to get them not only to fit the meter, but the message, and then the kind of shape of the words is important to me. The way it feels to sing them, the way it feels to hear them, the overall kind of.
That's a love. Sorry, jump in there. That's a lovely way of putting it. The shape of words, because I'm the same. It's a case of the sound or the way the words resonate. They need to
definitely.
They have to bounce at the right point in the song, because that's part of the sing along ability of a phrase.
It totally is.
It's not just the melody. It's the vowel sound upon which you're holding that note at that time, and where it moves to, and how the diphthong works, etc., etc. And you just do that I do it by trialing lots of different options. So I'll often have a skeleton of a lyric, and then it will come out very different by the end. So I think what a lot of us are saying here, Becky, would you agree with some of this as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't think I necessarily have a kind of a two-phase thing where I first of all write it with a concept and come up with my lyric, and then sometime down the track rewrite it. I think it's a constant process.
So what I think I'm saying here is that, Boydie, we actually agree with you in many respects. Our aims are different. We all aim for good songs, I hope. No one aims for a bad song, but whereas writing for pop means you're aiming for a very specific, what did you call them? Lead sheets, was it?
Yeah, lead sheets, tip sheets.
Tip sheets, yeah, that's one that I was trying to remember there. So you have a very specific, you have to keep referencing back. You can't let the song turn into something else and then, I love, this is really cool, I like where this is going. You have a laser aim, whereas we have our aim to write a good song, which is obviously a broader spectrum. And Paul, you mentioned that with the song that we heard on the podcast earlier, that there was you don't write for a genre, you don't aim for a style, so it will go in its own place. So, and you can have fun with that, and we can all do that. And often singer-songwriters should, because we don't want an album of identikit songs, because that's not going to interest the audience. We want to show our musicality and our range of influences, so we can have fun aiming in different directions. Well, not aiming, spreading different directions, but the aim's always a good song, whereas maybe writing for the charts is aiming for a good song with the very specific lead sheet.
It is, but I would still say that the techniques and the rules, I'm going to say again, there are rules, that those rules are relevant to both, because I've heard singer-songwriter that, write about, I think we started off with a debate about you in lyrics, and I've heard songs, I did this and I did that, and I just kind of think, I don't care what you did. But again, that's down to good writing and songcraft and everything else.
Indeed. Right, guys, I think we should wrap it up there. Loads of good points there. I feel like I've actually learned something there, bouncing some ideas around. It's interesting to hear how we all approach this. And yeah, I think there's been a few threads on the forum recently that you've been jumping in on, Boydie, about songcraft versus songwriting and how it should all be put there, and some very interesting thoughts in general coming around that. So yeah, this is definitely a discussion which will be ongoing. So if you do have any thoughts about that, guys, do get in touch. And on which note, let's move on to Becky, our community communications officer. To give you a very formal title there, Becky. Let's hear from a few things that people have been saying from the last episode or two.
Yeah, sure. I think the most kind of interesting comment perhaps came from Viscount Kramer, where I think this was in response to our discussion on the last podcast about the way that we write. So connected really with what we've just been talking about, but more on the music side, because his question was about the importance of knowing music theory, and that's a really interesting point. And he made some interesting points himself, and I think it's probably one that we'd like to pick up and have a longer chat about in another episode. So that one's to come at some point.
Yeah, as much as we were talking about writing music, we forgot the actual music theory and the music part of it from the ground up. Partly because that would be slightly assumed that if you were writing songs, you'd at least know a couple of chords. That's a chord and a scale put together for everyone listening there. That you know a couple of chords and a couple of scales, and you'd know the basics of how music goes together. And if you didn't, you'd at least be doing it by ear. But yes, knowing, I'd say the baseline would be knowing some basic theory and ideally knowing a little bit about chord substitutions and chord theory there. But yeah, we didn't talk about that at all. So watch this space for a discussion about what we think is essential for songwriters to know on a musical theory side of things. Yep, carry on, Becky.
Okay, we mentioned in the last episode about the Dreams competition, so a competition for writing songs themed on dreams. Just want to mention that again, and we'll be keenly looking out for who the winner of that competition turns out to be. And on the theme of competitions, obviously we've got Paul from Canada here today as the winner of the April competition, and coming up soon will be the May competition for Song of the Month. That's on the Songwriter Forum, and watch this space for nominations. And again, interested to see who the nominees are and who the eventual winner will be.
Lovely. Where can people go to listen to the nominated tracks from last month's forum competition?
So the Songwriter Forum has its own SoundCloud account, and there's a playlist there. So that's at soundcloud.com/songwriterforum.
And some very good songs indeed. So do pop along to check in and listen to those. It's been getting quite a few hits there, Anthony, hasn't it? I've noticed.
Yeah, I've got a steady stream of people following and having to follow back. So it's nice to know that people care enough to come along and listen to the nominations. I'm really looking forward to building up an archive, actually. I think it's going to be really interesting listening after a year or so. Yeah,
I mean, even if it's just the song of the month each time, that's a great way of doing it, because there was a discussion of how we choose which songs to repost, and obviously we didn't want it to become too picky about that, because then it becomes a risk of mild snobbery going on there. But
yeah, with the best one in the world. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. I think with the best one in the world, I'd love to repost every song that gets posted on the forum, but I have to work. So
you have to work, yes.
It's just a case of necessity at the end of the day. If I can figure out another way of including more material, or if anyone's got an idea about how I can help, make some of this material more well heard.
So I think a very good idea is to add the 5 nominations or so each month from the songwriter competition. That's a great way of putting them in, and that will be a creme de la creme of each month, and that will build up slowly.
The way the songs get selected for the competition, there'll be a different competition master each month, so it won't necessarily be songs of the same nature or genre or whatever that are constantly coming up. Whoever decides to take the reins can take that competition in any direction they choose to. So.
Very true. So that stops one person taking control of the approved music there. So, yeah. But yes, as you say, Anthony, if anyone does have any other good ideas of nomination methodology, then do get in touch. So yes, that's all good there. So I think we're coming towards the end of our episode there. So firstly, thank you very much, Paul Tall, for coming on and joining us as our first guest.
Yay!
Yes,
thanks, guys. It's been a real pleasure.
You are more than welcome, and we hope to see you again sometime. So what we're going to do now is go around and do our regular plugs. So firstly, obviously for the podcast itself, if you're listening to us on YouTube at youtube.com/songwriterselect, please do subscribe and feel free to share it on your social networks to spread the good word. If you're listening to us on iTunes, you can find us by searching Songwriter Select Podcast. Please do rate and review us, and obviously tell your friends there. It really helps spread the word. We've had some really good feedback. We've had a few reviews pop up on there already, so we want to keep that momentum going there. You can follow the forum at facebook.com. Sorry, not the forum, the podcast at facebook.com/songwriterselect, or you can find us on Twitter at SWSelectPodcast. Anthony, I'll leave you to plug the forum and then your own stuff, so take it away.
Okay, the forum hasn't changed. It's songwriterforum.co.uk. If you pop on there, you can easily find links to our SoundCloud and Twitter. My own personal Twitter is at Anthony Laneism, and that's the same for my Facebook. So I'm going to be putting a record out soon. Keep an eye on those feeds, and trust me, you won't miss it when it comes out, because I'm going to be all over that.
That's what you got to do, the social network whoring, and good work on it. Okay, Paul over in Canada, Paul Tull, can you give us any social network links for yourself, if anyone wants to check out your music or such?
Sure. Well, primarily I'm on soundcloud.com/Paul Canuck. That's spelled Canuck, which is an affectionate word for Canadian over here in North America.
That's a new one to me, but good stuff.
Paul Canuck, and I've also got a YouTube channel under Paul Canuck as well.
Great stuff. Do check out his music. It's really good, guys. Becky, where can we find yourself?
I'm on SoundCloud as Becky Lucy Thomas and Twitter as Becky Lucy Music.
Brilliant stuff. And if anyone wants to connect straight with Becky to give feedback to be read out on air, obviously please do so there. And you can also email songwriterselect@gmail.com and I'll forward those across to Becky as well there. Boydie, what have you got to plug there?
Yeah, I'm on soundcloud.com/BoydieMusic, and that's Boydie, Boydie, Boydie Music there, and Twitter as Boydie Music, so, and
Great.
on the Songwriter forum.
As Boydie, yes, very much so. Last but not least, myself, I am at James Nighthawk on Twitter, James Nighthawk on SoundCloud, and /James Nighthawk on Facebook. And I completely neglected to mention last week that I released a new album a month ago. So I am terrible at the self-promotion. I did put a song from the album in the middle of the podcast there. But if you do want to jump onto iTunes or Spotify or anything of your choosing, you can listen to my new album. It's called Beauty and Sorrow. And yeah, have a listen if you want to hear some of my music. That will pretty much round us up today, guys. Thank you very much for a very interesting discussion there. I thought that's pretty. We got in some depth in there on that feature discussion. I quite enjoyed what we got through there. So
Yeah, it was meaty.
It was meat. Meaty's a good word there, Anthony. I like it.
That's no good for a vegetarian.
I'm allowed to say meaty, and I'm a vegan.
He's wearing the coat.
Oh, careful. We've offended
Point
without
taken.
meaning to there.
That's all right. No, I'm all good.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me. That'll wrap us up for today, and we will hopefully see you all again in 3 or 4 weeks. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.